Hi, welcome to Salon Talk. My name is Sabine.
And I'm Nicole, and today we are speaking with Valdary.
We will be discussing hair and entrepreneurship, so hope you enjoy. So I am so excited. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to Chloe Valdary of Theory of Enchantment. Yes. No, really. Oh my gosh. Chloe is like so thebomb.com.
Thank you.
You are.
Yes.
So inspirational. So Chloe, you have natural hair, and you know we're in the natural hair industry,
Yes.
textured hair, all about the naturalness of your beauty, bringing out your natural beauty. So tell us about your hair journey. Just a little bit about it. Tell us, how did you pick your hairstyle today?
Okay, well, as you know, you did this hairstyle for me a few days ago. I like this hairstyle because it actually reminds me of like Cleopatra. It's like a Cleopatra-esque style.
Nice.
So it reminds me of like royalty, ancient Egypt. And I added the little clips,
Hair jewels.
the hair jewels, the silver hair jewels to bring it out and make it pop. But I like it because it's both sophisticated and convenient. You know how much I really value convenience when it comes to my hair. So in terms of my hair journey, I had a relaxer for a very long time growing up, at a very early age, maybe even like 6 or 7.
Really?
I could be wrong about that. Sorry, Mom, if I am. But yeah, I think it was like really early. And then I found it very limiting actually in terms of the kinds of styles I could do, because I was still hesitant to do things like getting extensions, or even with a relaxer. For some reason, the way I imagined hair was very limited. I imagined that it required so much work to put in to make it really look awesome. And part of me was just a little bit lazy, and then like just didn't want to get into that, devote the amount of hours. So I didn't really approach hair as an art form when I was growing up. It was just like, okay, I'm gonna get this together and go. And then in college, I went natural. So like basically that entailed cutting all my hair off, starting from scratch.
Yes.
And now it's the length that you see it today, in part because of this salon, so thank you. But I've actually recently started to think more about hair from the perspective of an artist, and from the perspective of like the act of styling, and styling not only as something we think of particularly in the world of hair, but in life in general, like this idea of approaching life as a stylist or as a stylizer. I really appreciate that, and so I'm thinking more and more about experimenting with my hair, in a healthy way, obviously, but just having more fun with it and experimenting more with it. So that's where I am now.
So Chloe, you talk about approaching your hair in more of an artistic form. While you were in college, did you do the braids, did you do the weave, or you just went natural and you just worked with your own hair?
I just went natural and worked with my own hair. So it was short, so it was manageable in that sense. I would get it dyed, so I would get it different colors. Usually like bright auburn, red. I would usually go into that sort of tone because it really looked nice. But other than that, I really wouldn't do much except for just letting it sit as it was. That came with problems sometimes because I didn't necessarily pay attention to what was happening. I thought I could just like leave it and go. But it's so funny looking back at old photos. I'm like, I could have experimented more. I just had other things going on in my life, and I wasn't really paying attention to hair. I wasn't really focused on hair. So yeah, it was just natural and slowly but surely growing. And eventually after college, I moved to New York and found you guys, and you were able to nurture my hair and show me and teach me your ways so that it was able to grow. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said like you cut it short. So now I know, we all know that people cutting their hair all off, having it from, let's say, shoulder length, and then cutting it, really short, skin, like maybe minds, or even like having the TWA, how that can like mess with your confidence. It could just mess with overall like getting comments from other people, family members and such.
Yeah.
And then you being in college. So how did that impact you and like maybe your friends or your self-esteem? I know people may be going through that now, like trying to figure out like, oh, I want to cut my hair off, or I don't really want to cut it off, and you know, having those issues.
In all honesty, my hair was so not top of mind that even when I didn't get it fully cut off. I got like the relaxer cut out, basically.
Okay. So you say like maybe 2 inches of hair, 3 inches of hair.
I mean, it was long, and then it was like, it was short, but my natural hair is very what do you call
full, dense.
Dense. It does this thing where it shrinks. Yeah.
It does this thing. It shrinks.
I have massive shrinkage, and so even in its natural state, this is the thing that actually frustrates me about my natural hair. Like the shrinkage, like it's so long. It's actually longer than this. It's so long, but because of the shrinkage, it bounces up, you know. And so, but back then, I didn't really. I don't know. If anyone was saying anything about it, I wasn't really listening because I wasn't.
Good for you.
I wasn't thinking about that in the first place. I wasn't focused too much on that. And now, am I more conscious of it? I think so. I think I am. And like I also sometimes am a little self-conscious about like, well, should I experiment? Is it okay with experimenting? Like, what if I change the style and it doesn't look good, or I don't like it after 2 weeks? Like, you know, you really carry your hair with you. It's not something that you can just put to the side. It really can make or break your day. So I feel like that's something I still sometimes have self-consciousness around, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little side note to what Chloe said about the shrinkage. Ladies, it happens to all of us. But if you have shrinkage, as Chloe talked about, that means your hair is healthy. So when your hair shrinks, it means your hair is in a good place. That means its coils are going back to its original format. So shrinkage is healthy hair. So don't be deterred by it. There are things that you can do to accentuate and pull back down, elongate your natural curls, but don't be intimidated by shrinkage. It's good for you.
Yes.
Well said. I know that.
It is. Yes. Speaking about connections, when I first saw Chloe with Theory of Enchantment, I was so blown away by it. Oh my gosh, you guys have to. When I say have to, see and like get her emails. Like, you gotta really connect with Chloe, because like she is like she's on a different level, really on a different level. In regards to making certain connections that we may have all like seen or heard of these movies and heard of these songs and stuff like that, but being able to make those connections with our day-to-day lives and with people, I was like, yeah, this is it, girl. We're gonna be in money. We're gonna get rich. That's what I was saying to her, for real. I was like, oh my goodness, girl, you gotta put this out there. I was just like so head over heels over about it. But anywho, so let Chloe explain to you about how you created Theory of Enchantment.
Okay, so Theory of Enchantment, let me just back up and say what it is. So Theory of Enchantment is my company. I teach people about diversity and inclusion. I teach people how to combat racism. And so that's what I do. I train mostly corporate clients, but if you're an individual, you can also enroll in the program. Now, how this came to be was a very long journey. When I first moved to New York, I was at the Wall Street Journal for a year. I worked on a thesis on the idea of how to teach people how to love. My background is in international studies, conflict and diplomacy, but within that world, there are all of these strategies of how to combat conflict, but not necessarily how to teach people how to love. And these two things are not the same things. So once I got to the journal, I wanted to crack that code. And I said to myself, well, in order to teach people how to love, maybe I have to ask, what are people already in love with? and then use that to reverse engineer the process. And the biggest source of data, material that tells us what people are in love with is pop culture. So at this point, I started studying really brands that had, religious-like devotion from their fans. Brands like Nike and Beyonce and Disney, to see if there's a common theme, a common denominator across these brands. And the common denominator was the following. All these brands created content where you, the audience, saw yourself and your potential reflected in the content. And that's why we gravitated toward them, and that's why we love them. And I found that phenomenon of human beings basically awakening to themselves and to their gifts and to their potential by engaging with things found in pop culture. I found that incredibly enchanting. And that's why I called it the Theory of Enchantment. So now the Theory of Enchantment is based on 3 principles. These 3 principles are all about how to deepen interpersonal connection with people, how to deepen relationships with people, and again, fundamentally, how to love. The 3 principles are as follows. Number 1, treat people like human beings, not political abstractions. Number 2, criticize to uplift and empower, never to tear down, never to destroy. And number 3, root everything you do in loving compassion. So those are the 3 principles, and then undergirding those principles, we use pop culture to teach them. So we talk about what does it mean to be a human being? Well, as human beings, we have the capacity to do good, and we have the capacity to do evil. Who's an artist that talks about this in their music? Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is a Pulitzer Prize winning hip hop artist who talks about one of his songs, DNA. He says, I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. When he says that, he's articulating his awareness of his own complexity. And so the practice of love comes with the practice of self-refinement. And the reason how this relates to fighting racism is because people who are whole, people who have a healthy sense of self, don't gravitate toward extremist ways of thinking. It's only when people experience psychological insecurity, a lack of a feeling of belonging, a lack of feeling of meaning, a lack of feeling of significance, and they overcompensate for that lack of belonging, for that insecurity. And that overcompensation sometimes manifests itself in supremacist ways of thinking and racist ways of thinking. So what my company does is we go in, we teach people how to deal with themselves, essentially, how to make peace with themselves, so then once extending to themselves love and compassion, they can begin to extend love and compassion to others. So that's the Theory of Enchantment.
All in a nutshell. Wow. A mouthful, right? That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. That's Theory of Enchantment. Theory of Enchantment is a lot.
Yes, it is.
But the base, you have 3 principles, right? And those pretty much is the foundation of Theory of Enchantment. But how would, let's say, for me, and I need to get number 3 on that on the list, right? Which is the 3rd principle, which is I missed it.
Try to root everything you do in love and compassion.
That's it. I knew it, but I was like, I want you to put it together exactly how you said it. But yeah, how do I rule everyone?
Roots everything you do.
Roots everything that I do with love and compassion.
Yeah.
When your neighbor is not being loving compassion to you.
Beautiful.
Especially during these times sometimes that you have people don't want to wear masks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your neighbor don't want to wear a mask and you're around no more.
That's a great question. So I'd say 2 things. Number 1, the principles are really sort of subsequent, meaning they're built on top of each other. So you really can't do number 3 without learning number 2, and you can't do number 2 without learning number 1. So it's all connected. Exactly. However, I will say that in this particular case, the practice of rooting what you do in love when you're dealing with someone who's doing something that obviously is harmful or bothersome on some level, that lies in the realm of what we call shadow work. So this idea of the shadow comes from the psychologist Carl Jung. He was a Swiss psychologist in the 20th century, 19th century, I want to say. And he talked about shadow work, and this idea of shadow, the shadow is that human beings contain the shadow and the light. And the shadow is everything that is within you that you despise. And what we do as human beings is we project what we despise onto other people, right? So if you read any of James Baldwin's essays, when he was writing in the 50s, and he was talking about white America, he made this observation that white America was projecting its own deficiencies onto black people. So they didn't do shadow work, basically. So I would say, I just think everyone should do shadow work. And the work of shadow work is essentially not relating to this person who's not wearing a mask, like not saying that they shouldn't be held accountable for it, right? They should be held accountable for it. But the question then becomes, why am I so bothered by it? Aside from the, health impact, am I bothered? I'll give you another example. If someone is being rude to me, obviously that is a bad thing, right? But if I'm bothered by it, if I'm like set off by it, the reason why I'm set off by it is not simply because they're being rude. It's because I recognize my own capacity to be rude, and I don't like that. So that's why I'm bothered by it. Whereas if I were to integrate that shadow piece of me, acknowledge that aspect of me, and again, integrate it with the light, I would be less bothered by that person's rudeness. It's not that what they're doing is bad, it's just that it doesn't set me off. It doesn't mess with me internally. And so I would suggest similarly trying to adopt a similar attitude when dealing with a neighbor who's not, wearing a mask, or with anyone who's doing something irritating. Again, the question is not, are they doing something bad? The question is, how will you respond to it? And what is your internal state so that you can respond in a way that at least doesn't, change you or lower you to their level.
Okay. I get it.
Seeing that your company works with other companies and with the adults.
Yeah.
How about teaching this? Because I think this is fantastic. I think if the younger generation is put on this path, on this platform, we can see a really great change in humanity.
Yeah, so it's a great question. The truth is, I started out trying to bring this curriculum to high schools for teenagers. Unfortunately, I discovered that it is very nearly impossible to sell curriculum to schools because of the bureaucratic nature, because of the red tape. On average, it's a 3-year sales cycle from initial conversation to contract sign. 3-year sales cycle for curriculum, and it's even worse during COVID. That being said, we have partnered with a Montessori network called Higher Ground, and next month, actually, we do have enrollment open for teenagers. If their parents want to enroll them, there are also full scholarships for the program as well. So I can send you that link, and you can put it in the info. But yeah, so slowly but surely, I am partnering with different distribution networks that work with teenagers, that work in that with that age group, so we can try to get it out to that demographic.
I find we should even try from lower than teenagers. Let's start them at the grade level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's my area of expertise. I would have to speak to an early childhood education person, maybe modify the course a little bit. But there are a lot of opportunities arising as a result of this work, so I think that maybe in the long run we'll be able to accomplish that.
Wonderful.
Speaking of opportunities arising, I am so happy about that for you. Congratulations, Will, on that.
Thank you.
From how you began, starting this company and where it is right now, did you foresee that?
No. Absolutely not.
How? What has it been in that short period of time or a long period of time?
It was relatively a very short period of time. I was trying to sell to high schools up until maybe April of last year, 2020. And then when things started happening around BLM and the marches, and companies started demanding diversity and inclusion training. And we already had that component in the course itself. We already had James Baldwin. We already had Dr. King. We already had Maya Angelou whose texts and poems and writings you had to study as part of the training. So I did what many people in startup life do. I pivoted and started to market toward that particular market, and that's when I began to see a lot more demand, and also just a shorter time in terms of securing contracts, which was really important in order for me to stay afloat. So yeah, but it was a short time in which that change occurred.
So Chloe, I know you were working for a nonprofit, and you, as you said, you leaped. You took that leap of faith to start your own startup company. Just expound on that a little for me. Now that you are a CEO, employer,
all the things,
all those things, you know. Just explain to us how that transition came to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked for a nonprofit for 2 years, and actually at the end of so let me back up. During the nonprofit, I was basically refining Theory of Enchantment. I was lecturing on college campuses about these 3 principles. It was like a 45-minute speech with the 3 principles, with the pop culture references. That's what I was doing. So I did that for 2 years on college campuses here in America, in Europe, and in South Africa. So that's what I was doing. And then my contract was not renewed at the end of the 2 years. Now, meanwhile, at the time, I was thinking, I'm going to start Theory of Enchantment next year. But then they didn't renew my contract. And so it was as if the universe was like, no. This year. You're going to start it this year.
Now you do.
Yeah. So, and also, so many of my colleagues were telling me, because I was like, when an employer doesn't renew your contract, you feel bummed in the beginning. And my colleagues are like, but it's time. It's time for you to go. It's time for you to do your own thing. Okay. So that was very encouraging. And people were responsive to that 45-minute speech that I was giving. And their response was, this isn't just applicable to conflict and diplomacy. It's applicable to, as I said earlier, teenagers and social emotional learning. It's applicable to relationship building. So you might want to consider going off on your own. And one person was like, you should turn this into a full training, not just a 45-minute course. So the first thing I did after my contract was not renewed was immediately start the LLC. So that was my leap, really, because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I formed the LLC. And the second thing that I did was start to develop the full training. And that was what the transition looked like. And again, it was a leap because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't have a, grounded sense of being in that particular, very vulnerable. But the idea is to take what life brings you, the unknown, the chaos, and turn it into order and turn it into meaning. I actually think that is the task of an artist. That is what makes an artist, whether it's a hairstylist or, a business owner or a musician. That is what we're fundamentally doing. So transition periods can be daunting, can be intimidating, but they're also an incredible opportunity to take advantage of. And I'm trying to remember to take my own advice as I'm saying this, as it applies to hair. I know this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But yeah, so that's what the transition was like, and it turned out well in the end.
Okay. Well, looking back, is there anything you would have fine-tuned or changed to get to this position again?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I would have focused on businesses in the beginning. Although, again, I want to get into schools, but I just didn't know that it was so difficult to do. So maybe I would try to work with businesses first. Maybe I would also be more proactive about developing like pre and post surveys to take to clients after, before taking the training and after. Because that's like that data-driven, report card that you have that proves the impact of the program. So I was just like, I'm excited to create the training. At first I didn't create all the other things that measure, the impact. So I would probably do that, focus a little bit on that a bit more. But you know, it is what it is at this point.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's good. That's good. So, are you going to implement? Are you implementing any of that now?
Yeah.
You are doing that
Now we have.
But now you have all of this.
Now we have pre and post surveys.
Exactly.
And we're gonna be looking to even become more extensive with our data collection.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's good. That's good. So you did learn something. You are implementing it, which is a great thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because we talk about a lot about that as well. Off and before and around when we were always discussing that we learn a lot of things, but we don't implement them in our lives, and that's very important. As being a business owner, that you're learning as you're doing all of this new things, and then you're implementing them as well. That's great.
Absolutely.
So is there anything that you can advice that you can give to an entrepreneur that may be watching that wants some advice on should they stay in their job, should they not stay in their job, or what things they should probably start to do before
Yeah, I would say I don't know everyone's circumstances, so I'm not going to
just
give
in
you
general, just a little
crazy advice. I just said even if you think you're in a situation where you can't leave your job now, I would still try to plant the seeds for your own endeavors, for your own entrepreneurial ambition, whether that means reading about the market that you want to enter into, studying it. Maybe even trying to develop a product on the side, depending upon the nature of the product. There's still other things that you can do, even if you have to stay at your current job right now. You can plant those seeds and create the opportunity so that when you do feel like the moment has come, you already have a tool set that you can pull from. And then on the other hand, if you are ready to leave your job, you think you can do it, you're ready to make that leap. I'd say hold on tight.
That's a really good one. Hold on tight. I love it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And don't let go.
Don't let go.
No matter what you do not let go. You gotta keep moving forward. You can't slow down. You can stop a little bit, but keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You gotta pick back up and keep it moving. Well, thank you so much for that. That was very insightful, Chloe. We love having you.
Yes, we do.
Yes. I'm looking forward to seeing how Theory of Enchantment grows. And then, giving you a personal lesson on your hair.
Yes, because,
we're going to do that. Yeah.
They're all both interconnected.
Yes. And stay tuned for our other shows that will be coming on monthly. And please like, share, and subscribe.